Hi, we're back again on our third episode of the Leadership Download. My name is Cameron Singh, and back again with Travis Van Duzen. We're going to do a three-part series on the leader's mindset. So today will be part one, and we're going to be talking about how the best leaders think. Craig Groeschel is coming out with a new book called Winning the War in Your Mind, and he says your leadership is always moving in the direction of your strongest thoughts. How you think will determine how you lead. Most people are interested in what leaders do. However, it's better to ask, how do other leaders think? And in order to do this, you want to try these three steps. Number one, you want to find a leader that is several steps ahead of you. And once you find this leader that's several steps ahead of you, you'll start to feel some type of disorientation with the wisdom that you're getting from that leader, which will allow you to shift your thinking to that leader that you're looking up to. And it'll stretch your capacity. Travis, do you have an experience with this to help you grow in your leadership?
Yeah, oh man, this is probably one of the most important things, not only in my leadership, but also in my career, has been being able to develop those relationships with mentors and people who will be willing to speak into my life. There are some people that I will never be able to pay back, that have spoken into my life, given me advice that has allowed me to deviate and move around mistakes that they have made in the past. Help me to get ahead where they knew the decisions that I was going to have to make before I had to make them. So finding those people who are 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 steps ahead of you, it's really key to being able to be a good leader and also not have to fall in all the traps that most leaders fall into. So, man, mentorship is probably the reason why we're even here tonight talking.
Yeah, and there's one leader that I seek a lot of mentorship in. This leader is several steps ahead of me. He used to be a CEO. Now he's doing a lot of different things in the aviation field. And one thing that I noticed, it always helps me to, as I mentioned earlier, stretch my capacity, think about different things. Because learning from the CEO with the vast experience that this individual has, I feel so disoriented, but it also feels so good every time I speak to that individual. And then moving on, number two, you want to watch where you push back the most. Travis, could you shed some light on this? What is an area where you see yourself pushing back the most?
Yeah, I had been given this advice a couple of years ago that when someone provides you feedback, when someone gives you some advice or gives you a thought, that they're trying to help you, pay attention to how you respond to those items. And for me, one of the things that I often find myself pushing back on is when someone wants to question a decision I made, especially if the decision is kind of inside of what I believe is my expertise. I get kind of I may feel a little bit of, not aggressive, but maybe a little bit offended. I may become a little bit more defensive. But what I found is, just because I feel that that may be my strength area, I still need to take that moment and pause and ask myself, why am I feeling so defensive in this situation? Because usually when we have that defensive mindset with someone providing us feedback, there's usually a reason behind it. There's usually something that we're missing. There's a blind spot that we're missing. And even if it's an area of expertise, like I just said, we have to take into consideration that feedback and make sure that we're at least listening to it. We're at least taking that opportunity to get that feedback.
Yeah, Travis, that's something that I struggle a lot with too. Is an area that I push back is constructive feedback. It's my first reaction to any type of feedback is being defensive. But I continuously have to work on that. Is the feedback is always to help me grow in my leadership. Another thing is also facing conflict. This is something that I struggle with a lot, but yet
Mm.
I continue to encounter and is facing conflict. I don't like confrontation. I don't like any conflict. I like keeping everything smooth, things running properly. Once there's conflict, I go in my shell. But that's something I've been working on is in terms of an area where I push back the most. Number three, lastly, is be willing to be wrong. And this is one area that I struggle with the most because I always like to be right as a leader. Travis and I have been our general managers in our different fields and organizations, and I like being right all the time, and I'm very stubborn at that, both professionally and personally. Travis, what's one area where you might need to challenge your thinking in order to grow?
Well, for me, really, I think I'm still working on my conflict resolution. Becoming better at dealing with conflict. So, in a lot of situations, I feel like maybe I dealt with that situation really well, and we resolved it. But often, I may have a mentor or someone come and speak to me and say, well, you could have handled it a little bit better. So that's probably an area that I've still working on, because as you said, none of us like that confrontation, and that's so it's a major work in progress for me. So that's kind of one area that I definitely need to listen to more advice on.
Yeah, and that's something I struggle a lot too with, Travis, is just taking that conflict head on and finding the best solution for resolving a conflict. And also, it's building the confidence in us as leaders in dealing with conflict and confrontation. Because in the end, we represent the companies that we work for or organization that we work for, and we have to do whatever it is to run the business, deliver the product or service that we're going for. So tackling the conflict head on will make sure that issue gets resolved, and it won't be something that drags on where it could become even more toxic than it is. There was a situation just earlier today where I had to separate employment with an individual, and I had to shift. I was very nervous about it, very, very nervous because I'm new in my role here, and I had to shift my mindset. This is something that the business needs. It's going to help the location's future. It's going to be good for morale for the team. And once I shifted that mindset, I was impressed with my performance, how it went in that discussion, because I had a mindset of what I wanted. This would be good for the team. So that conversation went well in terms of conflict resolution.
Awesome. One of the other things I was thinking about with, just kind of being willing to admit when you're wrong is early in my leadership, I kind of felt when I took my first general manager position, I always felt like I always had to be the guy with all the answers. And I felt like even if I didn't know the answer, I couldn't tell, a subordinate or somebody who was under my leadership, I couldn't tell them, hey, I really don't know that answer. And really, you could take that in two different directions in your career. You're either going to be that guy who always tries to have the answer, but often is not able to provide the resources and the correct information. So therefore, people will often get frustrated with you. And what will eventually happen is if you decide to keep going down that track, you really begin to develop a relationship with your team that it's really a distrust, that they'll come to a point that even when you do know what's going on and you do know what to do, at this point they don't trust your judgment anymore. So I think it's just better to sometimes just be honest. Hey, I really don't know. Let's work on this. Let's figure this out together. And that way, at the end of the day, they'd say, you know what, Travis, he will let you know when he's in uncharted territory or if he's not 100% sure. And when he's 100% clear and he knows he's operating in his strength zone, then he is 100% clear that he knows the direction we need to move in. So I think that's important in establishing that in the relationship with the people you lead.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Travis. I'm in a new environment right now. And to be honest and transparent, I have no idea what I'm doing. It's a brand new environment for me. And I went up to the team. It's like, hey, what do we need to do? Because I have no idea what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
what do we need to do to change this place? Because of course there's various issues and areas of improvement, and that's where they open up. They told me that no one ever asked that question before, because historically, there were leaders in place that felt they were always right.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, and so moving on, we all have a leader that we admire and would learn from. And some questions that I would want to ask a leader that I admire and the way they think about leadership is, one, what is the greatest regret in the area of their leadership? I would want to ask, tell me about a time that you made a bad call and how you did, how they recovered from that with their team. Travis, what are some questions that you would ask potentially?
Yeah, I mean, I have similar questions. I actually adopted a list of questions from John Maxwell, and I actually adopted a practice that he uses. He does something called a learning lunch every month, and I've actually started to build in my schedule, especially for 2021, of being able to at least have virtual, lunch and learn style meetings with different people who I've viewed as successful. So, just a few of those questions that he asked, of course, you've kind of already mentioned is, what's the greatest, mistake? What's the greatest lesson you've ever learned? What's the greatest mistake that you've ever made, and how did you recover from it? What's the best piece of career advice that you've ever been given? Another great question is, what are you learning right now? What are you learning as, a CEO or a senior leader in a company, or a retired leader? What are you learning right now? And then another question that I have found extremely effective that John Maxwell's always asked is, who do you know that I should know? So as you're building these relationships, you can also be building relationships with other people that can potentially give you more advice and give you more guidance. I mean, the goal here is that you're almost wanting to, you want to take advantage of the system. You want to take advantage of this opportunity of all these people who have already lived and worked in the environment that you're currently in. Why would we want to make those same mistakes that they made when we can simply just take the advice and simply, navigate around those landmines and put us ahead of the game, even though where they were and at that time at this time in their career.
Yeah, that's one thing that I enjoy, Travis. Yeah, I stay in touch with a few leaders that are well ahead above my level, and every time I'm so excited when I go out to lunch with them or have a phone call or whatever it may be, or sending them an email, because I'm so excited to get their feedback and ask, of course, the challenge is asking those right questions where you're going to get enough takeaways. And I go away from, after meeting this person for lunch or whatever it is, and you get that feeling of disorientation, but you're also very encouraged because now you have a little bit of clarity, from a person that has, way ahead of you, and they know what it's like where we're, kind of our levels in leadership. So it definitely helps stretch our capacity and mindset. And that's definitely the goal here. The best leaders think differently from the rest. Travis, do you have any additional thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the last thing I'd really say is, one of the benefits of having that mentorship relationship is that they will. There's oftentimes I've been having the discussions with someone who's been super successful, and where you see them at that point in their career, you're saying, my goodness, they've never done anything wrong, like they've never made any mistakes. They've gotten there by doing everything right. But when you really start digging into asking them questions, you realize that the same struggles that you currently are enduring are identical to what they also endured at one point in their career. So there's a lot of encouragement that comes out of that whole conversation of understanding that, hey, I know what you're going through because I once went through it. but yet I still got to, reach my goals. The only last thing I would say is just when you build mentorship relationships, make sure you're very intentional in these relationships. I mean, we could literally spend another 45 minutes talking about just this, but just 30 seconds would be, make sure if you're building relationships with mentors, make sure you are respecting their time. Make sure you come prepared. Make sure that you are engaged in what they're in what's the conversation. And if you set a 30-minute limit, respect that 30 minutes. Don't go over. You won't be invited back into those opportunities again if they do not see the fruit and the respect of their labor, their time given to you. So I think that's really huge in being able to get them to come back to you again in the future.
Yeah. One of the things that I've enjoyed in having discussions with leaders is, as Travis, you mentioned, is understanding where they fell short, whenever they fell short, or when they had to make those tough calls. That's how you really learn, the story behind that CEO, the story behind that executive or vice president or whatever it might be, that person might be, is if going through those experiences where you have to make those tough calls, have conflict, it builds your character and it helps you shift your mindset.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So this concludes part 1 of our series of the leadership mindset. In the next few episodes of the leadership download, in our 3-part series, Travis and I, we're going to be discussing empowerment and investment into our people. And another episode will go through possibilities and inspiration for our people. So thank you for your time for watching today's episode, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Bye-bye.